Hey, what's up? This is Todd Smith. I'm back with another video. In this video, I want to talk about the evolution of digital synthesis. Analog is all the rage today. Modular analog gets a lot of the hype. And I feel the digital side of the spectrum is doing some amazing things, and Korg in particular is doing some really great things when it comes to the wave state, the upcoming mod wave, the OP6, which I have over here. I really do like how Korg is trying to take a more hands-on approach with the controls, almost giving that analog feel with the knobs and the sliders, but still having that digital complexity there that you would have with your old menu dives, easing the menu dives a bit with that front-end interface. As we know, that's the one bane that holds a lot of people back from really loving digital synths is a menu dive. All digital synths are going to have some type of menu dive. Some are more intense than others. And a lot of people in the analog world, they prefer a knob per function kind of machine. And with digital and how complex digital machines can get, it can become almost impossible to really create a knob per function. So if you're 100% knob per function mentality, you'll never be fully pleased, I think, by a digital synth. Me, I grew up menu diving, so I'm actually pretty content diving into menu, creating some sounds, doing some things of that nature. It really doesn't scare me too much. I grew up very much in that field. And I think if you look at the 5 digital synths just around me that I own, you see a broad stroke of evolution in the interface of digital synthesis. The CZ3000 behind me from Casio is regarded as a great sounding synth, but it is a great example of a great sounding synth hidden behind a very nasty menu dive. It's pretty archaic in the sense of how the front interface works with just your panels and how deep the sound engine goes. Actually, I would argue the CZ line, I would love to see something updated, brought to the table that had a much better interface than its old school version. I myself control it via software, via touchpad on an iPad when I create my sounds, which gives it much better interface. But anyone who's touched the CZ and really explored its, built-in default interface knows it's a perfect example of a really rough menu dive. The Ensoniq, is another really old synth, but they got a lot of praise for making an interface that was ahead of its time, and actually still today is a very low-key menu dive digital synth. The way they created their interface is very much, most of these are one touch per functionality. Very few things have multiple menus, and when they do, it's very easily labeled so you know that. Ensoniq was very much ahead of its time in that sense. They did amazing control per functionality for that era. They really, in a sense, helped create what is known as the workstation, or evolved into the workstation. But their workstations were very much minimal menu diving. And not only that, they still sound amazing today. The ESQ1 I have over there sounds great. The SD1 sounds amazing. And then you warp over to the Microkorg in Waldorf. You start to see knobs on digital synths. You start to see the concept of some analog control on a digital synthesizer. And actually, I would call the Microkorg not even a menu dive, because there's very little to no menus in here. It's a knob dive. There's 2 big knobs that you use to select where you want to go. Then your main control knobs up here change depending on where these knobs are dedicated. The Waldorf, even though it has some knobs and you have some of that analogish feel control, definitely is a much deeper menu dive than the Microkorg. It still has that old school, I got to go deep in the menu functionality to really do anything. But you definitely see an evolution in control over these old school synths. And to me, the main kind of evolution that we're seeing so far is more analog feel style controls on these digital synths, which very much are starting to replicate analog in their sound with the virtual analog engines. And to me, the Microkorg sounds amazing when it comes down to the virtual analog field. I feel it's a little better than the Waldorf if you want to get analog with it. The Waldorf is still great. It can do amazing things, and it can do analog sounds, but I just prefer, if I know I'm chasing an analogish sound from a digital synth, the microKORG very much will supply it. And this all leads into my latest purchase, the Op6 from Korg, which by far has the most complex front interface of any of these digital machines. The control on the Op6 is starting to get a lot more complex than anything else. And I think this front end control evolution of really complex engines that were hard to use before is going to be very interesting to see, because they're going to be able to add a lot of new aspects to that because it's digital. So I really like the concept of them being able to maybe grab some old school engines, again, like the CZ, and do something like this, and then add to it. Because it's digital, they can add a lot to it. They can make the CZ a lot smaller. They can add a lot of things, effects, crazy things in there that the original CZ couldn't do. Give it a front end control. You're going to have a crazy new era of distortion synth that people can actually use right out the gate without having to use some software. And that part of digital is actually pretty interesting to me, and I'm excited to see how that evolves. I've been using a lot of digital synths in my recent jams. If you've listened to anything recent that I've been doing, it's pretty much been 100% digital between the iPad and the digital synths that you see around me. Digital is really powerful to somebody who's a budget musician because it's easier for you to have big saving capabilities that you can recall later, easier to get larger poly counts on a cheaper budget. Those things in the analog world are going to require a heftier investment per piece. So as a budget, studio artist, digital is really powerful, I feel, to somebody who is in those shoes. And the great thing about digital these days is it can sound very analog. So you can definitely still scratch that itch in the digital world, which is very nice. I'm pretty excited to see how this all evolves, where it goes from here. I really like what I got from the Op6. I feel it's a great path to be going in the digital spectrum. So what do you guys think? I'd love to know your opinion. It's kind of a broad topic, so feel free to drop anything you want. As always, stay positive, stay creative, support each other. In peace.